how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to that car vlog channel. If you don't already know, I'm Andy. And we're doing more with the Chevy. We're actually going to start getting everything removed to replace the head gaskets on this truck. And of course, my Haynes repair manual arrived in the mail. My replacement anyway, so that I actually know what I'm doing. So I've got the hood up, and I think the very first thing I'm going to do is clean up all this leaves and twigs and stuff from where it was just kind of sitting out there where those pallets are now, idle for 6 months or more. I'm going to do that, and the first thing that's got to be done is draining the cooling system so that I don't get antifreeze into places that antifreeze shouldn't be in, or at least any more than it already is. And I've got my 5-gallon bucket, sprayed it out, get all the junk out of it, try not to contaminate the antifreeze. Pop open my radiator cap. I really need to get another one because these locking things are stubborn. There we go. Let's see what we got in here. Actually, a level is decent. Anyway, come down in here, open up this drain plug here, and everything should drain into the bucket below. Okay, so I don't know where my flashlight went to, so we're using the cell phone's light. Now, first thing I'm going to have to do, take my air cleaner off, remove all of the upper radiator hose, these heater hoses, fuel line, anything that's going to get in the way of getting this manifold off. So these are the first things we're going to do: radiator, heater hoses, fuel line, air cleaner, and we'll come back. Alright, and here's our progress so far. So I've removed the upper radiator hose, I've removed both heater hoses, the one off of the water pump as well as the one off of the intake manifold. I've removed the power wire to my electric choke over here on the carburetor. I've removed the fuel line that runs from here to the carburetor. And I have taken and labeled all of my plug wires with the cylinder number that they correspond to so I can remove those. And that's why I like having my repair manual, because I've got all these nice little diagrams. It tells me which cylinder is which, 1, 2, 3, 4, rotation of the distributor, and the firing order right down here. And I just kind of drew myself a bigger representation of the distributor so I can label it myself. Just a little service to me. And so we got that much done. But now it's nighttime. We'll pick up on this in the morning. Alright, back at it again. I got a nice pile of stuff down here. Got my alternator belt, plug wires, there's a fuel line, radiator hose. I know I showed a lot of this in the last clip, but I detached the heater hoses from down here. I've already taken out one of the bolts from this here alternator bracket and loosened up this one down here, and we'll get that alternator off. Once again, this is my hot wire for my electric choke that's been taken off, and I also removed the lead for my temperature sender, my temperature gauge inside the truck. So now I've got to finish getting this alternator off. I've already disconnected the battery cables. This battery's pretty much shot anyways. I take this alternator off. This bolt here is what holds the alternator to this part of the bracket. It also allows for adjustment. This is a 1/2 inch on each side, so you need two 1/2 inch wrenches. Got a 9/16 for this bolt down here, and a 9/16 to take off the bolt for this alternator bracket. Also, when doing the alternator, this quick connect from right here, just squeeze and pull. This one, you need a 3/8 inch wrench. Make sure I'm right. Nope. See, I done grabbed the wrong one. 7/16. You need a 7/16 inch. Turn this nut and get this cable off of the alternator. Alright, I've removed the alternator, and now I have this hard fuel line that just kind of runs in front of the engine that I don't want to be too much of a hindrance. So I got my 5/8. I'm going to loosen right down here and take that off. And now it's probably a week or so later, and made a lot of off-camera progress with getting things off for the head gasket replacement. I've got a whole mess of parts down here. My distributor, here's the distributor cap, valve covers, their gaskets, exhaust manifolds over there. Like I said, I had before, I've got the alternator sitting here. I don't know where this came from. This is not part of my truck. Plug wires, fuel filter, breather cap, all that good stuff taken off. And while we're over here at this pile, I'll show some of the things that I found in this removal. Yeah, for one, I pick all the leaves out of here. That gasket's, I think that's the one that's got sealant on it. Tip it like this. Now, if you look past the leaves, you can see there's some pretty nasty, white, milky looking substance in there that was stuck up under the bottom of the valve covers, which tells me there is antifreeze mixed in the oil. That was my first clue. We'll get to that in a little bit. Come in here, I'll pull the spark plugs out. I got them sitting down here. Here's all my bolts for my exhaust manifolds. Here's my valve cover bolts. And these are my intake manifold bolts. All laid out to tell me exactly which hole they came out of. Put this cover over the engine because now things can fall in. You see a lot of stuff is taken off. We pretty much got bare heads now. See my exhaust pipe down there where I detached it from the manifold. That took a lot of effort, but it got done. This intake is pretty much ready to come off. I've got all the bolts out like you just saw. I've got I hope you can see it, that right there. Funny looking piece that was attached to the manifold. I don't even honestly know what that is. Now I'm probably going to have to remove the carburetor and the adapter plate before lifting the intake off, mainly because when I go to put the intake back on, I've got to be able to get in here with a torque wrench, and that's not going to happen with the carburetor in the way. Now, on to my theory that there was antifreeze in the oil, which is no longer a theory. So here is my spark plugs, and here I'm probably going to replace them all, but I pulled and labeled them anyway. This is my number 3. And you probably can't tell now, but when I pulled this plug out of the head and turned it up, it actually dripped green antifreeze. So plain as the nose on my face, there's definitely coolant in cylinder number 3. I'm sure it's sitting on top of the piston. Now I decided to go ahead and drain everything from the engine, drain all the oil. And I kind of let it sit overnight because it was dripping really slow, and actually it's still kind of dripping. I don't know if you can tell that, but it is still kind of dripping. This, when I pulled the drain plug out, I got about 2 to 3 ounces, at least by my estimation, of clearly green antifreeze, followed by the nasty oil, and then after that it just got thicker and thicker, and you can see this plug's been out of this oil pan for nearly 24 hours, and it's still dripping just this thick sludge. Here's my oil filter. If you look on it, in the light of course, look at that. It's a nasty milky mix, slurry on the oil filter. So I definitely got some very bad mixing of antifreeze and oil. And I'm hoping that that doesn't spell anything too bad for this engine, because we'll find out in time. I'm going to let that keep on dripping though, as long as it wants to. I'm sure I'm going to have to pull the oil pan. But I see a challenge there, because here we have this massive cross member on which everything is supported. We have control arms and all kinds of things. But it runs across the bottom of the engine. Up in here, I don't know how well we can see on camera. Of course, the oil pan starts here. It runs all the way back there to where you can see the flywheel or flux plate, whatever. And I'm worried about being able to get a ratchet up in there. And more importantly, later on when I put it back on, torque wrench. I don't know that I'm going to have the clearance to take that pan off without pulling the engine, which means I'm going to have to locate and commandeer an engine hoist. I'm hoping I don't have to completely rebuild the engine because of this, but it is a distinct possibility. Alright, but with that, I've placed the cover back over the engine so nothing can fall into it. There are so many places things can fall in now. The valve cover's off. It could fall through the oil ports in the heads. It could get through the hole for the distributor. And we don't want any of that. But that's that for now. I'm actually going to take another break on this. Come back whenever I'm able. And work some more on this. But right now there's plenty of other stuff to do. Alright, and we're back outside of the truck. Now before I do my next update, I'm going to try to start mentioning in each clip of this video the day on which I shot the clip and did the work, just to give everybody a kind of idea of how long this job is taking me in particular, since I'm usually always short on time. So the previous clip where I showed how I had been draining the oil overnight and it was still dripping, that was about 2 days ago on Sunday, March 31st. This is the evening, early evening of Tuesday, April 2nd. Roughly 72 hours that I had the drain plug out of the pan. I have now replaced the plug. I was getting about a drip every 30 seconds or so. So I figured good enough time to just go ahead and put that plug back in. The next step I'm going to take is I'm actually going to go ahead and, before I go any further with the heads or the intake, I'm going to go and remove the carburetor and the adapter plate, as well as my thermostat housing and thermostat. One, it'll make it a little lighter to pull the intake off, a little bit easier. Two, when I go to put the bolts back into the intake manifold and torque them down, I'm obviously going to need room for my torque wrench, a socket, and possibly an extension. And with these things in place, if I leave them in place and go to put the intake manifold back on, I'm just not going to have the clearance to get in here with a torque wrench. Also, I'm going to try to start mentioning more bolt and fastener sizes. I realized I hadn't been, so if anyone has been using this for instruction or reference, I've not been mentioning many sizes. So here I have a 7/16 socket and extension, just in case. And we're going to move this bolt here and this bolt here, and that will allow me to remove the thermostat housing. Alright, I've also decided to be smart and bring some more light into the picture. So here I have the paper gasket. This is non-reusable, but it looks like it'll peel up well enough. Alright, I scraped away what I could of this paper gasket before removing the thermostat, but I have to finish up with it out. This O-ring is part of the setup that came right off. Thermostat should just lift right out, maybe with a little wiggling or a lot of wiggling. Dadgum. There it is. A lot of wiggling. Oh, and it looks like that's the rest of the gasket. Ta-da! And thermostat comes right out. Thermostat is currently in closed position, obviously, because the engine hasn't been hot in months. This should still be a good thermostat, so I may try to reuse it, although they are cheap. So, who knows? Okay, next step is removing the carburetor. Now, we have the carburetor here, we have the adapter plate here. So first I need to do these nuts. There's one at each 4 corners. They're a 1/2 inch. And just to make sure I have plenty of height, I went ahead and attached both extensions. Now there is a challenge with this carburetor's mounting nuts. You see the front two came out just fine, but these rear ones here, this one and this one, this is designed in such a way that I cannot get the socket on there, and I can't even get the closed end of my ratcheting wrench on there, which would be amazing. So I actually have to use the open end of this 1/2 inch wrench. Okay, this last nut and washer on this corner was a little more challenging, because the way the body of this carburetor is designed, I can't unscrew the nut all the way off the stud with it all the way down. So I actually had to get my smallest pry bar, and all I did was I went in here in these gaps where there's not actually a gasket mating to the mating surface. It's just a gap. I went all 4 corners and used that gap to kind of push up enough to start breaking the seal on that gasket. And then as I lifted the carburetor up some, it pulled the bolt through, the stud through, and I was able to get that nut off. Now, with that seal mostly broken, I should be able to, with fairly minimal effort, remove this carburetor from the adapter plate. As always, be very careful though. Okay, here it is. Carburetor is off. And the reason you want to be really careful lifting the carburetor up as well as prying it, and the reason you don't want to use an actual mating surface to pry on, is because this and the carburetor are both aluminum. And I don't know if you can tell, but on this stud where I was pulling the carburetor off, it did manage to shave a little bit of aluminum off into these threads, just a little bit. It's not going to affect mounting it back or anything like that, but that's why you want to be careful, because these pieces are both aluminum and you can very easily damage something. Now here's the the gasket between the carburetor and the adapter plate. The rest of it's on the underside, so when we go to mount this back up, we're going to need to scrape that away, again, very carefully, and get a new gasket, because that's garbage. Here we have the adapter plate. Now these flathead screws are the ones that came with the plate. These are the ones we're supposed to use. However, the guy that helped me put this on when I got it seems to think that somebody jerry-rigged this stuff with the old carburetor and this original intake, and may have stripped threads, may have gone oversized, and so we actually had to put some different bolts in these holes here to get it to attach to the head to this intake. But I don't know if you can tell, but even with that, I'm able to rock this back and forth. You can tell more easily with the carburetor on it. But this thing is oh so loose. And I know I had a vacuum leak, and there's no doubt in my mind that this is where that vacuum leak was coming from, is underneath this adapter plate. But anyway, I need my big flathead, and I'll have to figure out what size this is, and if I can even get anything in there, and pull those out. So this bolt and this bolt, the incorrect bolts were both 3/8. That one came out fine. That one required a little hammering to get the socket in there, but it is out. And there's the adapter plate. Hardware reattached to keep it. And the adapter plate to manifold gasket, which is in a lot better shape than the other gasket, but still not getting reused. And there's the bare intake. And I think that's it for tonight. Alright, today is Saturday, April 6th. Another day in the project. And now comes the removal of the intake manifold. Now a few clips ago, which means about 2 weeks ago probably, I removed all of the intake manifold mounting bolts. They're gone. They're stowed away and organized. But now it's time to get the intake manifold off altogether. We've taken off everything that's attached to it. So, I have my knife here. This thing goes through a lot. Now along the front edge of this, and along the back edge as well, though it's going to be hard to get a knife back there, there's blue RTV between the manifold and the block and the heads. So very carefully, start by taking my knife and just kind of running up through here and cutting away at that blue RTV. Now I've already done that. I went up this way, came across, kind of stuck it in here, went across here, and then back up this side of the cylinder head. I've also started prying. Now that sounds bad, especially when you have aluminum cylinder head, because you could destroy the mating surface. But there's a part right here that does not contact the cylinder head. Gave me just the absolute perfect place to stick this pry bar in, angle a little bit, and get some leverage on the head. Not enough to hurt it. These are cast iron, so it's going to be very hard to hurt these. And start prying that up. And with that coming up, let me see if I can pull on that any with my hands. Oh yeah, that's coming up nice. Go to the back. I think we can still see. And there it is. Intake manifold has been removed from the engine. One of the gaskets is still clinging to it, but we have new gaskets. We're not going to worry about that. Undersides, got some oil on it. I have to get that blue RTV off. But otherwise, it actually looks pretty clean. The mating surfaces look good. They just need cleaned up. So there's the other gasket right here. I might have to work that one off. That's fine. And now we can see down into the lifter valley. I'll give that a check. I went and got my flashlight so we can actually see in the lifter valley now. Definitely looks like we got the antifreeze water mix up here as well, which I kind of expected. That's going to be a mess for a while. I'm going to have to get in there and wipe all that out. And there's probably a chance we're going to have to pull the engine too. Dang it. because I'm going to have to get the oil pan off. But that's another story for another time. But everything, I mean, things don't look too bad in here. I can definitely look down in here and see an intake valve, and it's nicely carboned up. I doubt we can see that on camera. And this must be cooling ports because there's a little bit of rust in there. Cast iron does that. But I think we're in good shape, and now I can take out these push rods and remove the head bolts and remove these heads from this truck. Alright, to remove our push rods, which is right here, and you see they run down through here. Here's a better shot over here. Push rod, it runs down through. This is it right here. And it mates with the hydraulic lifter. I'm assuming it's hydraulic, but the lifter down below. To get those out, we need to move these rocker arm covers. Now, not remove them, just move them. So we have a 5/8 inch socket, and according to my book, you just loosen this. I've already started loosening this first one. This is the exhaust on number 1. Alright. Enough that the rocker arm can be swiveled out of the way. Now, it's kind of a guessing game as far as how many turns that takes if you've never done this before, and I've never done this before. So I'm just going a few turns at a time. There. Now it rotates out of the way, and I can lift this push rod straight out of the engine. Now I'll do that with the other 15 push rods. 2 for each cylinder, 1 for intake, 1 for exhaust. And just like with everything else, these will be stored in the order in which they came out to make sure they don't get mixed up. And all the push rods are now removed, and I've put them in this little organizer that I made. But then I had a thought. I'm afraid these rocker arms are going to be in the way and drive me nuts trying to get some of these head bolts out. So I'm going to remove all the rocker arms, nuts and pivot balls, but leave the valves. I'm not taking any valves or springs out. And I've got 16 Ziploc sandwich bags. We're going to pack them in there, mark them so they go back in the original locations. And that should not hinder me from getting the head bolts out. And there it is. All the push rods and rocker arms and the different hardware has been removed. And each one is packaged in its own little bag that's been written on. And that way, everything can go back in its proper location. Don't video bomb. I've also went and removed the temperature sender from the cylinder head. And that goes right there. Ish. There it is. It goes right there. And that's not where it goes. That's the exhaust port. That's where it goes. Anyway, temperature sender's out. Now it is time to begin unbolting the cylinder heads. Alright, so change of plans. Instead of removing the cylinder heads from this engine while it's still in the truck, I'm going to be going a different route. I borrowed from a friend that I work with a 2-ton engine hoist and an engine stand. We're going to be removing the engine and most likely the transmission as a unit from the truck, since I understand that's supposed to be easier than separating the two in the truck. But here eventually the engine will be actually coming out of the truck so that I can mount it on the stand, turn it around, take the oil pan off, and really get in there and clean up some of the crap that formed when the antifreeze and oil mixed in the engine. It'll also be just a lot easier to work on the heads with it on a stand. So leaning over the truck would just be right here where I can just work on it, turn it around as I need to. Pull this pin, I can just turn it around as I need to. And should make things a lot easier for working on this engine. So that will be happening, I don't know when. In fact, the last clip before this was shot, according to the computer anyway, on April the 6th, and that's probably about right at the beginning of April, and today is August 31st. It's been that long since I've actually been under the hood of this truck. I've been focused on other parts of this project, which are in different videos or still in the making, and I just simply haven't had a lot of time, and up until recently I haven't really had the money either. I still don't have a lot of money, but it's a little bit better now. So there's that. Anyway, eventually this engine will be coming out and I will be breaking it down more. But for now, this video is just simply about getting it ready to remove, to do the cylinder heads, even though in previous clips of the video I've been talking about how I'm ready to remove the heads and this is what's going to happen. Now this is what's going to happen. I've got the equipment, I've got it for as long as I need it, which is helpful because I don't know how long I'm going to be needing this equipment. It's also helpful because the bed of the truck is sitting over there and the camera is sitting on the hood of the truck right now. They are separated from when I took that off to do the rear suspension drop. This thing is going to make it a lot easier to get that back on. So with that, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you stay tuned for the time when the time comes to remove the engine. Make sure to check out the other videos on this truck and on my channel. I already have a video up doing the rear suspension drop. I'm still in the process of doing the front end. That video will be up eventually, however it turns out. And make sure to go look at some of my other videos. I've got some reviews and other things like that. I've just got a running pickup truck, so go check out that review. Remember, if you're in the Knoxville or Tennessee or surrounding area and you've got a car, whether it's a cool car, a weird car, a rare car, new models, one-off creations, whatever, that you'd be willing to let me review and drive on this channel, much like I've been doing with the more personal type cars that I've had, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. Just let me know if you got something. I'll see if it's something I want to do, or more importantly, if it's something I can do. Make sure to follow me on social media, Facebook and Instagram at that Carvlog channel. Make sure you like this video, share it if you feel so inclined, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next videos go up. Y'all have a good day.